They hate.
They hate.
They hate.
They hate.
They hate because they fear.
They hate because they fear.
Because they fear.
Because they fear.
And they fear because they feel that the deepest feelings of their lives
They're being assaulted and outraged. They do not know why.
They are powerless pawns.
Powerless pawns.
They are powerless pawns
in a blind play of social forces.
Richard Wright.
From Mauhaus Productions, A Blind Play of Social Forces. Episode 8, A Blind Play of Social Forces.
Anyone who harms a child is a monster. I believe this to the core of my soul. I've spent my entire adult life, my career as an educator, equipping children with the tools they'll need to protect themselves from those who seek to prey on them. As Martin Luther King Jr. so aptly spoke, intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. That's what I have striven for my entire career. That's what I was doing when misguided David made his poor choice and attacked Sara Ibrahimi. So much promise in both of them, but so ill-prepared. If only I had reached them sooner. If I could have gotten through to them.
Tonight, public schools in crisis. With public school violence on the rise, we update you on a story we first brought you 7 years ago as part of our ongoing series, Violence in the Classroom. Many of you may remember the events at Parkview Middle School, where 10-year-old Sara Ibrahimi was attacked by one of her classmates, David Johnson, now on parole for a crime he committed when he was just 11. You'll hear interviews with Johnson, the Ibrahimis, school administration, and the educator at the center of it all, the man whose voice you heard at the top of the show, former State Teacher of the Year, Scott Avery. A warning to viewers, this story includes frank and open discussions of bullying and may not be suitable for our younger audience. And now, public schools in crisis, violence in the classroom.
Mr. Avery thought he was being kind when he kept me after class. He knew he had hurt me, but what he said was that he
Touched a nerve. Sara, Islam always teaches the annihilation of everything not Islamic. You don't understand because you're a child.
I wanted to say that my mother taught me only love, that Allah is love, but I hesitated and he continued. They have to prove to us
that their God is bigger than
our God. He said their and our as if the world had taken sides and that he was on my side while my mother was on the other. I wanted to tell him what my mother had told me, that God goes by many names and none of them are hate. But instead I simply nodded along and said, "Yes, sir."
You're not a bad person, Sara, but you're misguided.
He said, patting my hijab like a puppy.
It's my job to teach you.
"Yes, sir," I said, just wanting to leave, to stop smelling his coffee breath and his sweet cologne. I was waiting for him to dismiss me, to free me, but he sat on the edge of his seat, looking at me. I could feel him staring, though my eyes were locked onto his brown shoes. I was about to ask to be excused, but I didn't know if that was rude.
I bet you have beautiful hair. It's a shame you can't share it with the rest of us.
Again, I did not respond. What was I to say? My mother says that beauty is within, not an ornament for men to gawk at. Had I looked him in his tiny eyes and asked him why he covered his head with a toupee, would he tell me that he's guarding his modesty? He stuck out his hand and asked,
"Can we at least be friends?"
I made fists. Not in anger, but for protection. Despite my utter lack of bravery, I managed to say, I cannot.
Oh, right. Infidel germs.
Public education doesn't have to be one size fits all. Kids thrive with a mix of schools, including charter schools. Let your representative know that you support using public funds for charter schools. It's better for kids.
I didn't tell my mother what happened, nor of any of the teasing or the bullying, especially after her meeting with the principal. I wanted her to believe that at 10, I was
so happy. Oh, a smile to light the world. Oh, such a beauty. That skin and those headscarves, that sweet melodic voice. An absolute angel, little Sara. You know, her name originally meant quarrelsome. Sarai, the quarrelsome one. Sara, though, Sara means princess. Ignorance is not stupidity. Ignorance is a stain that can be treated with compassion and education. The children were ignorant of Sarah's culture. They saw her swimming in pants and thought her parents were abusing her. With Sarah's permission, we taught them about Islam. I was just as ignorant and curious as my third graders. Open, lively children, repeating words like hijab and chador, Mohammed and Mecca, Ramadan and Hajj. I would ask Sara quietly if I was
pronouncing the words properly, as if enunciation is what makes a religion. Of course, Yetta Sterner coddled the girl. Guidance counselors. Ugh. It wasn't Jewish leaders who cleared the camps. It was American soldiers. And we Americans didn't start any of their Islamic wars, not even the first one, which was also an international event. Yes, we are at war. And while politicians may pussyfoot around it, Islam is the enemy. But I will not compromise the truth for any number of objectors or those who are offended by it either. The French are still cleaning blood off their streets. Islam started this war. It has probably started all the wars it was ever involved in. And for reasons most Americans these days wouldn't ever support. She needed to know. Her people hate America, hate our God, hate
freedom. Just 2 weeks into my 5th grade year, Mr. Avery said he was going to show us what hate is. And he did. Video after video of planes flying into buildings, and he asked us to ask our parents why Muslims hated Americans. This was our homework. My mother picked me up from school, asking me again and again if I was okay. I didn't complete my homework assignment.
I don't think so. Yes, I was angry when they attacked us unprovoked. I was furious. But I am a professional educator. I didn't lash out and yell and point fingers. I simply educated in a calm and direct way.
This September 11th, share the history. Share the lessons learned with a new generation. Teach them about the ongoing repercussions of the 9/11 attacks. Teach them about how their government strives to protect them. Teach them about patriotism.
9/11. Never forget.
I got questioned about teaching my students about the slaughter of Native Americans at the hands of European invaders, instead of having the kids all sit in a circle with construction paper hats celebrating the first Thanksgiving. They doubted me at first, vilified me for sullying the image of the Pilgrims inviting Squanto to their bountiful feast. I was in the vanguard, a leader, a trendsetter. Now look at the changes in the curriculum. When I was awarded Teacher of the Year, the superintendent specifically mentioned my courage in teaching my students the painful history of our country. Most of those kids weren't born yet, and if they were infants. They knew so little of the attacks. I can remember that day as vividly as I can remember the day my son was born. I wanted my students to know that moment, to live that moment as best they could. So I showed them clips from the live news feeds. They wanted to know
if it was real. He showed those images over and over: tiny airplanes, explosions, black smoke, people running, crying, praying, over and over. We cried, clung to each other. He looked at me. Surrounded by friends, we were one, looked at me and shook his head. 2 weeks later, maybe 3, it was early October, I think, children who had eaten at my table now taunted me. They would cover their heads with napkins and speak gibberish. They called me Osama, and I had to
ask me who Osama was. Where did you hear that name? I asked her. She said some boys had called her that. I met with Miss Price, the principal of Sara's school. I asked her what she was going to do. She told me this was a delicate subject. A delicate subject. I counted 3 bullying posters as I walked to her office. But this is a delicate subject. I asked Sara every day how her day was. Her answer was always the same. Good. Good. Those eyes, her father's eyes, already tired at age 10. Good. No, but I didn't press her. Miss Price said she'd look into it.
I wanted to say then that maybe Sara would be more comfortable at another school, a Muslim school, with children like her. In this post-9/11 world, isn't that the safest place for an Islamic? I didn't because I did not know what the tuition would be.
I asked Mr. Avery. He's the one who said she looked like Osama bin Laden. Maybe she's his daughter, he said. Don't repeat that, he said. It was a joke, and I just thought it was really funny. So I started calling her
Osama bin Laden? I don't remember saying she looked like him. And I certainly don't condone bullying. Our school has a strict no-bullying policy. And I show my classes the bullying video every year. I go one step beyond. I developed a great lesson on what it feels like to be bullied. Other teachers use it now. David may have stepped over the line, but he was no bully, and certainly not capable
of a hate crime. I hated myself. To be honest, sometimes I still do. I'll be in class or at work, and some girl will be wearing a headscarf, and I'll convince myself it's Sara. In a way, they're all Sara. I know that sounds racist, but that's not how I mean it, I swear. I said I hated myself, but not at first. Not at first, of course. I was so proud in that moment. Holding her scarf, watching her try to hide her hair. Mr. Avery was proud, and that was the world to me.
You know what I hate? Tough stains, especially on my work shirts. But with Monacos, I don't have to worry. The space-age polymers in the fabric destroy stains even before I wash. Monacos, American-made, for American Saints.
After my dad died, I stayed in trouble. You know, the usual fights, stealing, skipping school, and I was only 9. Dad was in a plane crash, and I think that watching those jets hit the Twin Towers, even though they were just stupid YouTube videos, kind of awakened something in me, a hate to go along with all of the anger. Anyway, Mr. Avery had said he also lost his dad when he was a kid, and he understood what it felt like. He told me,
I know I can't replace your dad, David, but I'd like to be a friend.
I had never had an adult friend before, especially not a teacher, but I watched him while we were watching some report about 9/11. I could tell he
tried to understand him. I didn't know until I saw him on TV that David had lost his father. My father passed away as well when I was an infant, or so my mother had told me. We had that in common, and their brown skin. David looked terrified on TV, and I wanted to tell him that I forgave him, that he would be okay. He didn't hurt me, not too badly, not really. It
could have been worse. The rumors about my husband, his beliefs, living in some cave, learning to make bombs and fire guns. This was not the man I married, the quiet, scholarly gentleman, so full of love and compassion. He traveled, giving lectures on Cold War, Afghanistan, Russian history, whatever the occasion called for. Oh, he could talk for hours. After the day, he couldn't get on a plane without being harassed. Then he couldn't even walk down the street. He had convinced himself they had tapped the phone, that they were reading his correspondence. When the FBI came to interview him, something in him, I don't know, died, changed, awoke. He was gone. I had to tell Sara he had died. I told myself, maybe one day
If I could just explain. I didn't tell the boy to attack her. I didn't say, see that little Muslim girl, sick her boy. David had taken to staying after, like a tutoring session. He was obsessed with 9/11 and terrorism. But he had it all wrong. He asked me where the terrorists were from. I told him that there were Muslims everywhere, not just in one country. That's when he asked me
about Sara. Mr. Avery told me that Sara's people were terrorists, that their whole religion told them to kill all the infidels, that it wasn't just 9/11. It was the Boston Marathon bombing, the shooting at Fort Hood, the killing sprees in Washington and New Jersey. There were others we didn't even know about, he said. I asked him what an infidel was, and he said, people like us, David. People
like the Ibrahimis need to be with others like them. I'm not suggesting segregation, but there are Muslim schools where all the girls wear scarves and where they can pray when and where they need to without making a scene. God forbid we serve pork chops in the cafeteria and have the ACLU breathing down our necks. It's bad enough with the atheists and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please do not think that I condone what happened. I think that boy
didn't get what he deserved. I know he didn't hate me, so what he did couldn't have been a hate crime. My mother says I'm naive. Allah is love, Mama, I tell her. That's what they say about their God, she says. She's not to talk like that. The lawyer said they needed to make an example of David, to let people know that hate crimes would not be tolerated.
What I can't and won't tolerate is this double standard. We did nothing but celebrate freedom in the greatest country in the world, and they attacked us for it. Muslims attacked Christians. And don't give me any of that liberal baloney about how not all Muslims are terrorists and not all Americans are Christians. Name me one document from the Quran that hangs on courthouse walls. Do we say one nation under Allah? In Mohammed we trust? Does the First Lady walk around in a burqa forcing schools to cut out pizza?
With gas prices on the rise, I'm always looking for a great deal to fill up my truck. At Fuel America, they know that hard-working folks like me need a hard-working gasoline. Supercharged with everything your truck or SUV needs. Fuel America. Fuel up.
This is a Christian nation built on Christian ideals. And while I didn't tell that poor kid to attack Sara Ibrahimi, what he did made a statement. Now they're up in Dearborn with the rest of jihadists. I gave that girl a chance. Tried to teach her how backward she was. That's all I did. I'm not the bad guy here. I didn't fly a plane into an office building full of innocent people. I didn't kill people who don't believe the way I do. I don't treat women like cattle. I am a good man with a strong moral compass.
Mr. Avery had said in class that when moral, innocent people are under attack and they fight back, it's called self-defense. That's why it would probably be best if the United States got rid of all the Muslims. He said that Islam teaches the annihilation of everything not Islamic. So we had to defend ourselves instead of waiting to be attacked again. Sara started crying, and I just wanted to smack her in the face. Mr. Avery put a hand on my shoulder and said he'd take care of it. But nah, I wanted to show Mr. Avery that I could take care of it.
The school wasn't going to do anything, so I had to. I pressed charges. That boy may have been my Sara's age, but he didn't share Sara's innocence. He ripped her hijab from her hat and snapped her with it again and again. Whelps on her face and arms, blood and a symbol of innocence and modesty. She still has trouble with her right eye. And we are the terrorists. 48. That's how many people have been killed in America by Iraqi extremists in the past 14 years. Terrorists? And the big debate is whether a flag should be taken down. After the hearing, I couldn't stay there.
I have family in Dearborn, Michigan, and my mom enrolled me in international school, which is pretty much a school for Muslim kids. I didn't mind. It was actually a way better school than Parkview. Mom says it will get me into Brown. I believe I was in the library working on a report for my history project. I searched David's name on the internet, just an article about him attacking me, pleading guilty,
going to jail for a hate crime. I committed a hate crime. I hated Sara for killing my father, who died in a field near an icy runway. I hated her for believing in a God who told men to kill people like me. I hated that scarf. I wanted to rip it from her head. I wanted to hurt her with it. She would feel my hate. Did feel it. Whelps forming just as fast as I snapped the hijab. A circle formed around us. Other fifth graders coming out of lunch. Sara held her hands over her face. She fell to the ground. No one said anything. They didn't even move either, except to get a better view. I could see the teachers running towards me, hear them yelling, feel the crowd break apart. Mr. Meadows, the fourth grade science teacher, wrapped his arms around me from behind and pinned my arms to the side. Kids started to back away. Miss Price took Sara. Once the hall was cleared, once Mr. Meadows released his grip, Mr. Avery walked up. He walked me to the office where I waited for the police to arrive. And, before they took me away, he bent down real close and whispered, I'm with you.
I just meant that I was there to calm him down.
Is your child being bullied? Have you ever considered it may be your fault? Parents who support free thinking and individuality don't often consider the cost to their kids. Keep your children safe. Remind them. Go along to get along. Brought to you by America First.
You know, they still teach kids that the Civil War was a war to free slaves. As if the mighty northern states looked down and saw all those poor slaves and said, "That's wrong." We lie to them to protect them, but they need to know the truth. I got into education to change lives, not to tell lies. For 22 years, I have been teaching, coaching, sponsoring clubs, leading student groups. I don't broadcast all of my awards, but I'm proud of my accomplishments. I'm not going to let what happened to one student stop me from making a difference. You know, every day,
I still pray for him,
her.
For Mr. Avery. On the day my mother withdrew me from school, we arrived early. There was Mr. Avery with a group of middle schoolers holding hands around the American flag in front of the school, a group called Meet Me at the Flagpole. Their heads were all bowed except his, and he was looking straight ahead.
I'm sure glad things are working out for all parties involved. Thank you for watching Public Schools in Crisis, Violence in the Classroom. Stay tuned next for our Monday night movie, American Sniper. A Blind Play of Social Forces was written and directed by Michael Mao and stars Yosra Zekri as Sara, Pascal Casimir as David, Malia Muth as Mrs. Sterner, Andressa da Silva as Ms. Price, Olya Aman as Mariam, and Rich Green as Mr. Avery. Sharmarki Purcell is the voice of the epigraph. Trevor Tremaine composes our theme music. Cover art by Geneva Hicks. Sound effects courtesy of Pixabay. Additional music by Kevin MacLeod. All links to the music are in the description. To find out more about our cast, to read the original short story, or to donate to the show, please donate to the show. Visit us at ablindplaypodcast.com or on Instagram at Mauhaus Productions. That's MAUHAUS Productions. Next week is our last episode of the season. After that, we will be busy producing Season 2 with more stories written by yours truly and voiced by yet another international cast. While this show is free to listen to, it is not free to make. Please consider supporting the show. It's quick and easy. Visit ablindplaypodcast.com and scan the Venmo QR code. Tip us $1, $5, $10. In the coming weeks, we will also be building our Seed and Spark fundraiser and offering some cool gifts for supporters, including vinyl stickers, t-shirts, and early access to episodes and extras. In the meantime, tune in next week for our final episode of the season, Best Laid Schemes. If you aren't already, please follow the show. Your podcast app should have a follow button. Click it. And please rate and review. Ratings and reviews are the lifeblood of podcasts, and they take so little time. Just click those 5 stars. Tell us about your favorite episode. Share with friends and family. And thank you for listening.